It was a pleasure to burn. Did you like the taste, of rain? And did you look at the grass?
Hey, what are you doing here? This is my web series. Get out of here. All right. Time for another episode of the most awkward web series on the internet. Today we're going to be talking about the next 25 pages of Fahrenheit 451. It's enough out of you. Where Guy Montag ponders. And sometimes he wonders. You get the idea. Alright, so let's get back into this. We start off our little adventure here with a nice, completely normal interaction with Clarisse, who is rubbing dandelions on people and telling them and asking Guy Montag if he's in love. This is another question that he should have no problem answering, but yet somehow he has problems answering. She says to him, "What a shame. You're not in love with anyone." That's on page 26. And that'll bookend our little chapter today, because at the end of the chapter you find out that Mildred can't even tell... Okay, that's enough idea. Mildred can't even tell Guy where they met 10 years ago. So, again, this is more of a reinforcement that Clarisse has got some kind of effect on Guy. She talks about how her psychiatrist at the bottom of 26 wants to know why I go out and hike around in front of the forest and watch the birds and collect butterflies. I'll show you my collection someday. Interesting section here. She mentions birds and butterflies, animals, insects, serpents are all interesting symbols in the text, which will come out in a different form later. But it's interesting, her interaction with nature versus the rest of the characters' interaction with nature. This goes back to the idea of, have you looked at grass? Clarisse looks at the world differently. And it reinforces the idea of a dystopia, that she has a different perspective.
Did you just say utopia?
It's a dystopia.
Oh, this.
That a dystopia is, she reinforces the concept of dystopia because her outlook on nature is somewhat normal to 2017 America. So, her effect on Guy. Bottom of 27. He felt his body divide itself into a hotness and a coldness, a softness and a hardness, a trembling and a not trembling, the two halves grinding upon one another. So this is more support for this idea that Clarisse is a catalyst. She is the source of a sort of chemical reaction inside Guy, sort of recognition that something, there are two sides to him. That was a point that was first established with the concept of the mirror in the first section that we looked at here. Page 28, bottom of 28. We get our first interaction with the mechanical hound, capitalized mechanical hound. Interesting. That's a kind of an oxymoron, right? The definition of oxymoron, opposing terms which are joined together. Mechanical and hound are opposing, like Jumbo Shrimp, Biggie Smalls, and parking on the driveway and driving on the parkway. Mechanical hound is not, robotic dogs. Although I guess you could probably go to Toys R Us and maybe some of you got a mechanical hound for Christmas. But something that wasn't conceived of in Ray Bradbury's day. So this is a literal, living, robotic manifestation of the weapon of a dystopia. That we find out that it has this stinger, that a proboscis, which kind of like alien, comes out and can inflict a paralytic poison and anything that goes against the dystopia. And that goes again with our original definition of dystopia, is that people who live in a dystopia, or utopia for that matter, are willing to do anything and everything possible to maintain the order of that society. That any outsider is a target and a threat to the natural order. So Guy's response is fascinating. Guy on page 29, or I'm sorry, page 28, a little bit more characterization. It was like a great bee come home from some field where the honey is full of poison wildness, of insanity and nightmare, its body crammed with that over-rich nectar, and now it was sleeping the evil out of itself. Two things happen here. One, this is just amazing, beautiful prose. This is just fantastic display of language, of this evil that subsists on the insanity and nightmare. That's the nectar of it. That it feeds off of these terrible things in society, and now it has to rest because it's surfeit. It's filled with that terror. It has to sleep the evil off. It's like, Thanksgiving dinner. You've had too much turkey, and you have to take a nap on the couch while the football game is on. Well, the mechanical hound has to sleep, because it's ingested so much evil. And 29, Montag touched the muzzle. The hound growled. Montag jumped back. It's almost as if the hound senses the redolence, the vapor of Clarisse, who is of nature. She watches butterflies and smells the cinnamon leaves, and this is so antithetical. This is so the opposite of a dystopian society, that the hound senses that difference in Guy and is hostile towards it. And we have this little interesting backstory about the hound that this has happened before with the hound and Guy. So maybe there is something within Guy that Clarisse has brought out, and this is sort of symbolized by the interaction between the hound and Guy, that the hound senses in Guy exactly what Clarisse senses in Guy, that there is this latent, which means potential, which means under the surface, clarity or possibility of, or hope or something. Guy Montag represents something that Clarisse recognizes and the hound recognizes. Page 30, we have our next human character, and that's Captain Beatty. Pay special attention to the names of the characters in this text. Clarisse sounds like clarity. Guy is just a normal human. Captain Beatty. Then you also have the fireman we'll get to later. So page 30, our first scene with Captain Beatty. Put the lighter down. Montag stood, letting the fears pass by at the drop pole. Behind him, the four men at a card table under a green-lidded light in the corner glanced briefly but said nothing. Only the man with the captain's hat and the sign of the phoenix on his hat. At last, curious, his playing cards in his thin hand, talked across the long room. Montag? Doesn't like me, said Montag. What, the hound? The captain studied his cards. Come off it. Doesn't like or dislike. It just functions. It's like a lesson in ballistics. It has a trajectory. We decide on for it. It follows through. It targets itself, homes itself, and cuts off. It's only copper wire, storage batteries, and electricity. Montag swallowed. Its calculators can be set to any combination. So many amino acids, so much sulfur, so much butterfat and alkaline, right? We all know that. All those chemical balances and percentages on all of us here in the house are recorded in the master file downstairs. It would be easy for someone to set up the partial combination on the hound's memory. A touch of amino acids, perhaps. That would account for what the animal did just now. Reacted towards me. Lots of interesting things going on here. First of all, again, 1950s. This is a pretty amazingly prescient understanding of how DNA works, that the studies that we see in DNA now and tweaking knobs in our DNA strands can make us react or act a certain way. The other thing, too, is that Guy Montag obviously sees something in the hound that he finds dangerous. Page 31. We're starting to see the very specific effects that Clarisse has had on Guy Montag. And again, if you're, thinking about this in terms of paper, thinking about this in terms of an analytical response, AP, we're talking about shifts in characterization. In 31, Montag said, that's sad, because we all put into it hunting and finding and killing. What a shame if it's all it can ever know. That's a pretty jarring thought to be uttered in the company of people who are like Beatty and the firemen. So, we see that this transitioning Guy is well underway, and of course we owe that to Clarisse. So what is the point of the hound? What's the point of Beatty? They are precision-guided missiles. They are there to target any sort of, not just books, but what books represent knowledge of society and what happens when you have knowledge. You might start thinking critically, and what happens when you start thinking critically, you might question the moral fabric, the order. You might question your dystopian society. You might hope and yearn for something better, and moreover, you might organize and try to actualize that vision, which is my one fear and hope of students at Woodlands, is that you guys would be super dangerous if you were ever organized, but thankfully you're not. All right, moving on. So, Guy seems not to be helping this cause. More elements of a dystopian setting. The time, how time is counted here. Interesting. We have sections that start with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 days. That happens a few times. Page 32. And as many times as he came out of the house and Clarisse was there somewhere in the world, once we saw her shaking a walnut tree, once we saw her sitting on the lawn knitting a blue sweater. 3 or 4 times he found a bouquet of late flowers on his porch, or a handful of chestnuts in a little sack, or some autumn leaves neatly pinned to a sheet of white paper and thumbtacked to his door. Every day Clarisse walked him to the corner. One day it was raining, the next it was clear, the next after the wind blew strong, and the day after that it was mild and calm, and the day after that calm was day. After that calm day was a day like a furnace of a summer, and Clarisse with her face all sunburnt by late afternoon. Why is it, he said one time at the subway entrance, I feel I've known you these so many years. This is again going to bookend with the end of our talk in a few minutes, but you know, we really get into this juxtaposition, you know, this literary comparison between what Clarisse represents and what Mildred represents. Why does Guy feel like he's known her this many years? You know, it's interesting. Is it that he's recognizing some part of himself that is buried? The word is nascent, or you know, under the surface potential. Who knows? You know, we see that idea with a mirror, and the one of the first quotes I read to you about the recognition of two sides of himself grinding against each other. Interesting. So Clarisse is again that catalyst. Another shift on 33. Clarisse hands him a pile of dead leaves. Don't they smell like cinnamon? Here, smell. Why, yes, it is cinnamon in a way. She looked at him with her clear, dark eyes. You always seem shocked. It's just I haven't had time. Do you look at the stretched out billboards like I do? I think so, yes. He had to laugh. Your laugh sounds much nicer than it did. So now even Guy is having these genuine fits of laughter at the sort of, you know, antics of Clarisse. So that's good. That's all well and good. The problem is that the tone of the story is going to shift again in a few pages here. Page 35, unfortunately, and then Clarisse was gone. He didn't know what there was about the afternoon, but it was not seeing her somewhere in the world. The lawn was empty, the trees empty, the street empty. While at first he did not even know he missed her, or he was even looking for her, the fact was that by the time he reached the subway, there were vague stirrings of dis-ease in him. Interesting, dis-ease, disease. There is there's a sensation, there's an aura, there's a difference in the universe that he perceives without knowing that she's not there, and he senses she's not there. So it goes into us questioning about the point of the character. Does she exist? You know, does her family exist? Do her stories exist? Or is she there just to help us track Guy, who's having this natural progression as a character, from "It was a pleasure to burn." You want to say her line again?
No.
Thanks for all your help. From the beginning of the story, it was a pleasure to burn, to now he's, you know, giggling at the smell of rotten leaves. A simple routine, true, established in a short few days, and yet he almost turned back to make the walk again to give her time to appear. He was certain if he tried the same route, everything would work out fine. But it was late, and the arrival of his train put a stop to his plan. So, think about that, right? What is the point of a character like Clarisse in a story like this? That's a very AP, you know, very sort of advanced placement type question. Is what is the effect of the presence or not presence of a character have on the protagonist? All right, so moving forward, now we get a sense of the characterization of the firemen, Stoneman and Black. I mean, can you get more like hitch over the head symbolism of last names as Stoneman and Black? Montag looked at these men whose faces were sunburnt. This is 37. by 1,000 real and 10,000 imaginary fires whose work flushed their cheeks and fevered their eyes, these men who looked steadily into their platinum igniter flames as they lit their eternally burning black pipes, they and their charcoal hair and soot-colored brows and bluish ash-smeared cheeks where they had shaven close and their heritage showed. Montag started up, his mouth opened. Had he ever seen a fireman that didn't have black hair, black brows, a fiery face, and blue steel-shaved but unshaven look? These men were all mirrored images of himself. There's that another reference to a mirror. So is this the second side of the mirror? We have Clarisse on one side, and then we have these everyman firemen on the other side who guy looks at and sees himself, but he also is starting to vaguely recognize this alternative side of him that Clarisse has brought out. These men were all mirrors of himself. They were all firemen picked then for their looks as well as their proclivities, the color of cinders of ash about them, and the continual smell of burning from their pipes. They even smoke pipes. I mean, that's dangerous. Shouldn't do that. Captain Beatty there rising in thunderheads of tobacco smoke. Beatty opening a fresh tobacco packet, crumpling the cellophane into a sound of fire. It's almost this, like, cartoonish look of these really prototypical dudes sitting around a card table with like billows of smoke around them. So then we have a very, very tense episode with Beatty and Montag. Montag has this vague recollection about, the idea of having books. I tried to imagine, said Montag, just how it would feel. I mean, to have firemen burn our houses and our books. We haven't any books. But what if we did have some? You got some? Beatty blinked slowly. No, Montag gazed beyond them to the wall, the type list of 1,000,000 forbidden books. Their names leapt in fire, burning down the years under his axe and hose, which sprayed not water, but kerosene. Turn it down. Turn it down.
Yeah, but Dad...
Turn it down.
Dad,
Turn it down. Turn it down.
everybody-
Turn it down or I'm going to boil your iPad.
If you say boy, you...
No, but in his mind, a cool wind started up and blew out the ventilator grill at home. So he has the words of Beatty cause him to think of this ventilator grill that he has at home. And again, he saw himself in a green park and talked to an old man, a very old man. And the wind from the park was cold too. So is Guy hiding something from us? What is this weird reference to a ventilator grill at his home? And why is his thoughts? Why do his thoughts journey there when Beatty asks him if he has any books? Interesting. So the alarm rings, and the men jump to attention, and they slide down the fireman's pole to the quote orange dragon. Interesting. Back to the first part of the chapter when Clarisse is talking about the sort of natural and beautiful idea of going to the mountains or going to the forest and looking at butterflies and birds. Interesting how we see animals portrayed in this part of the book. We have birds, the hound, the dragon. Later we see beetles. We have salamanders. There's fishes. Is this sort of dystopian world altering or sort of bastardizing or corrupting those natural elements and turning them into the mechanical hound? The embers of the burning books are described as birds. The beetles, we'll see in a second, are the cars that arrive from the authorities. The orange dragon is the fire engine that they ride. These are all corruptions. These are all, again, oxymorons. These are usages opposite of the way they should be. These are natural occurring sort of entities, animals and insects. Noble creatures that are now used in a sort of opposing force. The mechanical hound now, instead of being sort of something you keep around and scratch on his head and reward him for good behavior, is now something that sedates you if you have a book or if you are an enemy of the state. So interesting. So the firemen leave, and very tellingly, the Montag forgets his helmet. So some shifts, some developments along the route of characterization that we're taking for Guy Montag. They arrive at the fire. Page 39. There's the woman who is like dancing hysterically in the middle of the flames, and she says, Play the man, Master Ridley. We shall this day light such a candle by God's grace in England as I trust shall never be put out. So this is an allusion, as a series of allusions in this text to authors. This particularly is a reference to two heretics who were burned by England for being heretics, and allegedly in a later volume about this episode, those are the last words, that they're being burned as heretics, and they say, by God's grace, we're gonna light such a fire that they'll never put it out. That our ideas will live on. And this is an interesting thought. If you're interested more, there's a great song called "Heretic Pride" by the Mountain Goats that explores this. But it's not an uncommon thought. And that the next line or next page, page 40. This woman who supposedly has books has been snitched out by, have reason to suspect, addict 11, number 11, Elm City, EB, and the woman recognized that as Mrs. Blake. Blake is a clear reference to William Blake, an English poet, and this goes back to, the Faulkner reference and the Millay reference. So obviously Ray Bradbury is, making these allusions on purpose. He's a smart man. They tape up the woman, and the Beatle cars arrive. There's another bastardization of the Beatles. Page 41. Books bombarded his shoulder, his arms, his upturned face, a booklet, almost obediently like a white pigeon. Later, there's another reference to time has fallen asleep in the afternoon sunshine. There's a reference to a text by Alex Smith. Moving on towards the rest of the chapter, page 44, on the way home from the fire, Montag, that quote, the Master Ridley quote, is rings in Montag's ear. It's Master Ridley, said Montag at last. What, said Beatty? She said, Master Ridley. She said some crazy thing when he came in the door. Play the man, she said. Master Ridley, something, something, something. And Beatty recites it. We shall this day light such a candle by God's grace in England as I trust shall never be put out. Said Beatty. Stoneman glanced over at the captain, as did Montag, startled. Beatty rubbed his chin. So Beatty tells us that to be a fire captain means that you have to have some knowledge. So gives us a little bit of insight as to Beatty's character. Interesting. These perhaps details will make themselves more important later in the text. And then finally we end with this idea of the Millie Clarisse juxtaposition, right? You have Clarisse, think of her name, clarity, Clarisse, to be clear-eyed, to be to see with purpose, versus Mildred. What is dread? Dread is a sense of fear, or impending doom. Mildred, and look at what they are occupying themselves with. Clarisse rubs dandelions on her chin and chases butterflies in the woods and asks if you've seen the grass and drinks raindrops. And what does Millie do? Millie, stands in the middle of her room and talks to imaginary characters who aren't really her family and can't even remember when she met her husband. So, interesting place to leave off there. Page 51, outside the house, a shadow moved. Anytime shadows move, it's not good. Have you ever seen a shadow move?
Yeah, but guess what?
What?
One time I saw a shadow move, but I made a mighty eagle, but then it ran away because I scared it.
So anytime you see a shadow move, you just have to make a mighty eagle?
Or no, like a puppet.
Or a puppet. And you should be all good. In this case, though, there was something else in that silence that he heard. It was like a breath exhaled upon the window. It was like a faint drift of greenish lumescent smoke. Go back to the initial description of the hound, and you'll see that this is a description of the hound's eyes. The motion of a single huge October leaf blowing across the lawn. Interesting, the very next sentence is the leaf, which is another reference to Clarisse. The hound, he thought, it's out there tonight. It's out there now. If I open the window, he did not open the window. So we'll leave off there today. I will have the next 25 pages up for you next week. And thank you for watching and subscribing. I'm up to 11 views. 9 of them is my mom. 1 of them was by accident. And 1 of them was me just refreshing to make sure the video was uploaded. I want to thank my son, Maximus. Thanks for your help. Last words, quick.
No.
All right.
But Daddy.
No, you can't have $5.